the voice that was taken away. The cruelest twist in Nate Dogg's story is almost impossible to imagine. The man whose voice made some of hip-hop's biggest records, Unforgettable, eventually lost the ability to speak normally. For years, fans knew him as the king of hooks, the smooth baritone who could turn a hard rap song into a radio anthem. But behind the music, his body was entering a battle that would slowly take away the very gift that made him famous. In December 2007, Nate Dogg suddenly collapsed and was rushed to a Southern California hospital. Early reports were confused. Some claimed he had suffered a heart attack. Others blamed exhaustion. Then his representatives confirmed the truth. At only 37 years old, Nate Dogg had suffered a serious stroke. The damage was frightening. The left side of his body reportedly became weak and later was described as paralyzed. Yet there was one detail that gave his family and fans hope: his speech had not been affected. His voice, the instrument that had carried hooks for Dr. Dre, Warren G, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, 50 Cent, and countless others, was still there. Doctors believed he could recover, and for a while, Nate appeared to prove them right. He entered rehabilitation, fought to regain his strength, and reportedly recovered almost completely from that first stroke. People close to him believed he was returning to normal. He was walking, communicating, and rebuilding the life that had nearly been taken from him. But the recovery was not the ending. It was only the calm before a far more devastating collapse. Less than a year later, another stroke struck. This time, the damage reached deeper. Paralysis returned. Memory problems followed. And the man who had once controlled entire songs with a few unforgettable lines began fighting simply to communicate with the people around him. What happened next involved life support, years of rehabilitation, a mysterious allegation about a car accident, and a family battle that continued long after his death. Where are you watching from today? Comment 1 if Nate Dogg was the greatest hook singer in hip-hop history. Or 2 if another artist deserves that title. Subscribe to the channel, because the next chapter reveals the first warning that changed his life forever. The first warning. The first stroke did not look like the end. In fact, for a brief period, it looked like Nate Dogg had escaped the worst possible outcome. After being hospitalized in December 2007, doctors confirmed that the left side of his body had been severely weakened. Later reports described paralysis, but his speech remained intact. That one fact gave everyone hope. The voice that had carried some of the biggest hooks in rap history had survived. Nate entered rehabilitation and began the slow process of rebuilding strength. Every movement had to be earned again. Walking, balancing, and completing basic physical tasks became part of a daily fight that most fans never saw. Public updates remained cautiously optimistic, and doctors reportedly believed a full recovery was possible. According to people close to him, that optimism was not empty. Nate made serious progress. His manager later claimed that he recovered close to 95% from the first stroke. He was communicating, moving more freely, and appearing closer to the man his family had known before the collapse. For fans, the story seemed to be turning into one of survival. Nate Dogg had faced a medical crisis at 37 and fought his way back. He had already spent years building a reputation as one of the most dependable voices in hip-hop. And now it appeared that the same discipline he brought into the studio was helping him survive rehabilitation. But the first stroke had also revealed something dangerous. Whatever caused the collapse had not completely disappeared. The body could look stronger while the deeper risk remained hidden. Recovery did not necessarily mean the underlying threat had been defeated. Nate had survived the warning, but he had not escaped the condition that produced it. Less than a year later, the same body that had fought its way back would fail him again, this time with consequences that could not be reversed. The king of hooks. To understand why Nate Dogg's decline hit hip-hop so hard, you have to understand what his voice meant to the culture. Nathaniel Dwayne Hale grew up connected to both Mississippi and Long Beach, California. But Long Beach became the place that shaped his sound, his relationships, and eventually his career. Before rap, there was church. Nate sang in a Baptist church where his father served as a pastor, developing the deep baritone that would later make him instantly recognizable. Long before producers placed drums beneath his voice, he had already learned how to hold a note, control emotion, and make a simple line feel larger than the words themselves. His path to music was not direct. At 17, he left school and joined the United States Marine Corps. After several years of service, he returned to California and reconnected with two figures who would help reshape West Coast rap: Snoop Dogg and Warren G. Together, they formed 213. Named after the area code associated with their part of Los Angeles, a demo connected them to Dr. Dre, and Nate's voice soon appeared in the world surrounding the Chronic. From there, he became the artist other rappers called when a song needed something unforgettable. He was rarely the main name on the record, but he was often the reason listeners remembered it. Regulate with Warren G became one of his defining performances. Later came collaborations with Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, Ludacris, and many others. Nate could take a hard record and give it melody without weakening it. His voice softened nothing, yet somehow made everything more accessible. That gift earned him the title King of Hooks. He was the bridge between rap verses and radio memory. The voice that arrived for a few lines and changed the entire emotional temperature of a song. That is why his medical story felt so cruel. Hip-hop had known Nate Dogg as a man who could control a record with his voice. Soon, he would be fighting to control his own body. When he almost beat it, after the first stroke, Nate Dogg's recovery became a quiet source of hope. He was not performing or recording at full strength, but the reports surrounding him suggested that the most dangerous period had passed. His speech remained unaffected, his awareness was intact, and rehabilitation appeared to be working. For the people closest to him, the progress felt real. His manager described him as nearly fully recovered. That meant the story could have ended differently. Nate might have returned to a more normal life, protected his catalog, spent time with his children, and perhaps even found a way back into music. The idea was not impossible. Nate had already survived difficult transitions before. He had moved between states, left school, served in the military, returned home, and carved out a place in an industry that rarely gives supporting voices lasting recognition. His entire career had been built on adaptation. But recovery from a stroke is not a straight line. A person can regain movement and still remain vulnerable. The first stroke had already placed enormous stress on his body, and the risk of another event remained. The public could see improvement, but only his doctors and family understood how fragile that improvement might have been. Every positive update carried an unspoken fear. What if it happened again? Then the fear became reality. In September 2008, Nate Dogg suffered a second stroke. This one was more severe, and the consequences were immediate. Reports described life support, a feeding tube, limited movement, and a much darker prognosis than the public had first been given. The first stroke had weakened him. The second one changed the entire direction of his life. The man who had recovered enough to give his family hope was suddenly fighting for survival again. Only this time, the damage was not limited to one side of his body. Memory, movement, and communication all became part of the battle. The comeback that had looked almost complete was over. Nate Dogg had not lost his life yet, but he had lost the future. Everyone thought he was rebuilding. The second stroke was the moment hope turned into fear. Nate Dogg was hospitalized again, and reports from family members described a condition far more serious than the public initially understood. He required life support and a feeding tube, and movement below his neck was reportedly limited. His team tried to remain positive. Public statements suggested the prognosis could improve, but behind those words was a much harsher reality. The second stroke left Nate partially paralyzed and reportedly caused memory problems. The physical damage was severe, but the cognitive effects made the situation even more frightening. This was a man whose career depended on timing, memory, and instant musical instinct. Nate Dogg could walk into a studio, hear a beat, and create a hook that stayed in people's minds for years. Now he was fighting to hold on to pieces of his own memory. Still, Nate survived. He was eventually taken off life support, and people close to him later said he recovered mentally. his awareness returned, his memory improved, and he remained alert. That detail matters because it changes how we understand his final years. Nate was not simply unconscious or disconnected from the world. According to his manager, he knew what was happening around him. The physical damage, however, remained. His body had been weakened in ways that rehabilitation could not fully repair. Reports described long periods in care facilities and a growing dependence on others for daily support. The second stroke also changed his relationship with speech. Some accounts stated that he could no longer communicate normally and had to rely on eye movements and an alphabet board. For an artist whose voice had made him famous, the image was devastating. A few years earlier, Nate Dogg had been the man everyone called when a record needed life. Now every word required effort, patience, and help. But even in that condition, he kept fighting. His mind reportedly remained present. His family continued visiting. His team continued giving updates. Fans continued hoping. The second stroke took away much of his independence, but it did not immediately take away the person inside. That made the years that followed both inspiring and deeply painful. Trapped behind the voice, Nate Dogg's final years were largely hidden from the public. There were no major performances, no dramatic comeback album, and no return to the stage. Instead, there was rehabilitation, constant care, and the daily reality of living inside a body that no longer responded the way it once had. According to reports, Nate remained mentally aware. Even when normal communication became difficult, he could understand the people around him, recognize what was happening, and stay connected to the world. But expressing himself required enormous effort. The contrast was brutal. This was the same man whose voice had moved effortlessly through songs like Regulate, The Next Episode, and Shake That. He had once needed only a few seconds to command a record. Now, even a basic message could require blinking, spelling, and waiting for someone else to understand. That condition did not erase his identity. People close to him said he was still Nate, alert, present, and fighting. But it changed the way the outside world interacted with him. The music industry moved forward while he lived mostly outside public view. Rumors about his death began circulating before he actually died. More than once, people online claimed he was gone, forcing those around him to clarify that he was still alive. Each false report became a strange rehearsal for the news that would eventually become real. Between 2009 and 2010, there were fewer headlines. The silence created the impression of stability. Nate was not suddenly collapsing in public, and his team continued to describe progress. He had survived 2 major strokes, recovered significant mental function, and remained under constant care. But the damage had accumulated. A body that survives repeated strokes does not return to its original condition simply because the headlines stop. His cardiovascular system had already endured years of strain. Then another layer entered the story. During the later estate battle, one of Nate's sons alleged that a vehicle accident had contributed to another stroke and worsened his father's decline. The claim was never established as the official cause of death, but it added uncertainty to the final chapter. Behind the silence, Nate Dogg was still fighting, and the people closest to him believed he was improving right up until the moment everything changed. The final collapse. In March 2011, Nate Dogg's condition suddenly deteriorated. After years of rehabilitation and relative quiet, his body reportedly suffered additional strokes. This time, there was no meaningful recovery. The news shocked the people around him because, according to his manager, Nate had been making progress. His death was not described as the final stage of a long, visible decline. It was described as unexpected. On March 15, 2011, Nate Dogg died at the age of 41. Early reports did not immediately explain the cause, creating confusion across the internet. Some people speculated about a heart attack. Others connected it to the strokes he had already survived. Within days, his attorney stated that Nate had died from complications related to multiple strokes. Other summaries later included congestive heart failure as part of the final medical picture. The explanation was not that one isolated event killed him. It was that years of damage had reached a point his body could no longer survive. Hip-hop reacted immediately. Snoop Dogg mourned the cousin and friend he had known since before fame. Warren G lost the voice that had helped turn Regulate into a classic. Das Dillinger, 50 Cent, The Game, and many others shared tributes. Their reactions showed that Nate's influence reached far beyond his own albums. He had been present in the soundtrack of West Coast rap for nearly 2 decades. His hooks had connected different eras, different labels, and different artists. Losing him felt less like losing one performer and more like losing a piece of the genre's structure. The tragedy was made heavier by the fact that Nate had already survived so much. He had endured 2 strokes, paralysis, rehabilitation, and years of reduced independence. People believed he had stabilized. Then, in a short period, his body entered a final cascade. The public mourned the king of hooks. His family faced something even more complicated. They had lost a father, husband, son, and relative, and almost immediately, they were forced to confront questions about money, ownership, and control. Nate Dogg's life had ended. The fight over what he left behind was only beginning. The question behind his death, the official explanation for Nate Dogg's death, has remained consistent. Complications from multiple strokes, with congestive heart failure also cited in later summaries. He had suffered major strokes in 2007 and 2008, lived with lasting physical damage, and then experienced additional medical complications. In March 2011, that is the documented medical foundation of the story. But years later, during the dispute over his estate, another claim appeared. Nate's son Nigel alleged that a vehicle accident involving LaToya Calvin had seriously injured his father and that a stroke connected to the collision contributed to his death. The accusation was serious, but it was raised inside a bitter legal battle. That context matters. Nigel and other family members were challenging Calvin's control over the estate, which gave everyone involved strong financial and personal motives. No public medical ruling replaced the official stroke and heart failure explanation with the car accident theory. The allegation may have suggested a possible trigger for part of Nate's decline, but it did not become a confirmed cause of death. The strongest evidence still points to a body weakened by repeated strokes and cardiovascular stress. Family members also publicly discussed unhealthy habits and lifestyle concerns, while medical commentators use Nate's case to speak about high blood pressure, diet, smoking, alcohol, and the elevated stroke risk faced by many Black Americans at younger ages. Yet none of those general risk factors should be treated as a complete diagnosis of Nate Dogg's private medical condition. The public record supports the strokes, paralysis, recovery attempts, final collapse, and heart failure. Other explanations remain claims or broader context. What makes the story so powerful is not the existence of one secret answer. It is the way multiple truths can exist together. Nate had documented health problems. His final death still shocked the people closest to him. A later accusation added uncertainty, and the full details of his final days were never released publicly. That uncertainty followed the family directly into court, where the alleged accident became connected to an even larger conflict: whether LaToya Calvin should control Nate Dogg's money and music after his death. The war over his legacy. Nate Dogg died without leaving a will. That single absence turned grief into a legal battle that lasted for more than a decade. He left behind 9 children, a valuable music catalog, outstanding debts, and a wife whose legal status became the center of the dispute. Nate had reportedly filed for divorce from LaToya Calvin only 19 days before his death, but the case had not been finalized. Under the law, Calvin was still his wife when he died. Nate's children and the mothers of some of those children challenged her position. They argued that his divorce filing showed his true intention and that Calvin should not control the estate. Nigel's allegation about the vehicle accident added even more hostility to the conflict. The court, however, focused on legal status rather than intention. Because the divorce was incomplete, Calvin remained entitled to inherit. She also became central to the administration of the estate. The children attempted to bring in different administrators and objected when Nate's mother, Ruth Holmes, was proposed as a co-administrator. Public accusations followed, Some family members claim that the adults controlling the estate did not protect the children's interests. At the center of everything was the catalog. Nate Dogg's music continued generating royalties, and the question was no longer only who received money. It was who had the authority to sell, license, or control the work that made him the king of hooks. The estate also carried financial obligations. Reports stated that an IRS debt of approximately $144,000 had to be paid before the assets could be distributed. Eventually, court documents valued the estate at approximately $7 million in 2024. Reports stated that the remaining value would be divided between LaToya Calvin and Nate Dogg's 9 children. The resolution came 13 years after his death. During that time, his children grew older. Some pursued music, and the catalog continued playing around the world. The court could divide money, but it could not repair the relationships damaged during the fight. Nate Dogg spent his career helping other artists create unforgettable records. Yet because he left no formal plan, his own final legacy was shaped for years by judges, lawyers, disputed claims, and family conflict. The last chapter is not simply about how he died. It is about what artists, families, and fans can learn from everything that happened after his voice went silent. What Nate Dogg's story teaches us. Nate Dogg's final chapter is not only a story about illness, fame, or money. It is a warning about what can happen when health problems are ignored, family relationships remain unresolved, and an artist leaves no clear plan for the future. The man known as the King of Hooks created music that will likely generate value for generations, yet the people closest to him spent 13 years fighting over who had the right to control what he built. The first strategic lesson is that success must be protected before a crisis arrives. Artists need wills, trusts, updated beneficiaries, medical directives, and written instructions for their music catalogs. A verbal promise or an unfinished divorce filing may reflect personal intentions, but courts must follow legal documents. Nate's family learned that painful lesson in public. The second lesson concerns health. His story should not be reduced to blame or assumptions about lifestyle. Strokes can affect people younger than many expect, and surviving one does not eliminate the risk of another. Regular medical care, blood pressure monitoring, rehabilitation, and support from family can save lives. Seeking help is not weakness, especially in communities where serious health conditions are sometimes discovered too late. The deepest lesson is about peace. Nate Dogg's children, Vidov, mother, and extended family all lost the same person. Even when they disagreed over money and control, no inheritance can replace a father. No court victory can restore a relationship. Families protect a legacy best through honest communication, fair planning, and respect before tragedy forces strangers and judges to make those decisions. Nate Dogg's body eventually took away his ability to perform, but it could not erase what his voice had already given hip-hop. Every time Regulate, the next episode, or one of his countless collaborations plays, the King of Hooks returns for a few unforgettable moments. Comment 1, if Nate Dogg will always be hip-hop's greatest hook singer. Or 2, if another artist deserves the crown. Like this video, share it with someone who remembers the G-Funk era, and subscribe for more powerful stories about the lives, struggles, and legacies behind rap's most influential voices.